This is the Garmin Fenix 6S Sapphire. It features offline music, mapping, Wi-Fi, and a host of wellness and training tools. But it's $750. And this is the Garmin Fenix. The original came out back in 2012 and retailed for $299 at that time. But guess what? I picked this one off eBay for 55 bucks. And I'm curious, how far have we come with the Garmin Fenix 6? Is it worth $750? $700 more than I paid for this Garmin Fenix. And what can this Garmin Fenix do almost 10 years later? That's what we're going to find out in this video today. Before we get into this sort of wacky comparison between these two watches, I do want to let you know about today's sponsor, and that is PlayBetter.com. PlayBetter.com is a USA authorized retailer for Garmin and Coros and Polar, all of the major brands, so there's no funny business there. They sell authentic stuff direct from the manufacturer. Not only that, but they offer free 2-day shipping and a free 60-day return policy with no questions asked. So you can send your device back almost 2 months later and still get your money back, which is a great deal. And for viewers of my channel, I do have discount codes available down below that will save you a couple of bucks on accessories when you pick up a watch. So go check those out if you're interested. Fun story, the original Garmin Fenix was my first GPS watch, I think back in 2012, 2013. I bought one for mainly hiking, adventuring, things like that. And I loved this watch. I wore it for a couple of years before I moved on to, I think, the Garmin Fenix 3 or the Fenix 3 HR. Still, it kind of held a special place in my heart. Sadly, when I moved on to a new watch, I ended up selling my Garmin Fenix on eBay. And all these years, I've just wished I hung on to it because I have so many other watches now. So I went out and I bought this one on eBay. Okay, like I said, we've got the Garmin Fenix 6S Sapphire here on the left, retailing for $750. And we've got the Garmin Fenix on the right here, retailing for just 55 bucks on eBay. And in this video, I kind of want to just compare them as if I was comparing other high-end watches. Even though this is a high-end watch, it's an older high-end watch. To jump into it, let's look at the hardware between the Garmin Fenix and the Garmin Fenix 6S Sapphire. This is the Fenix 6S, so it's a little bit smaller, but I also do have the Garmin Enduro here that you can see, and this is more similar to the size of the Garmin Fenix 6X. And you can see when you compare the Garmin Fenix to the Enduro, they're pretty similar in size. However, one thing that's different about the Garmin Fenix is that it's super thick. Compared to the Enduro here, you can see it's a couple of millimeters thicker, and when you wear it, it definitely feels more prominent on your wrist. In terms of build quality, it's hard to pick a winner here because both are well made. The Garmin Fenix, the original one, actually feels like a tank. It's super beefy, it feels really robust. I wouldn't worry about this, banging off a rock or something like that. Where the Garmin Fenix 6 Sapphire here, it is very robust as well, but this bezel that's made out of metal can end up a little bit scratched. I'd say it's a draw in terms of build quality. One area where the Garmin Fenix lacks is water resistance. We've got 50 meters of waterproofing on the original Fenix, where the new Fenix 6 can go down to 100 meters. Neither watch is designed for diving, but they're both capable of being, swimming in a pool, taking a shower with, anything like that. One major difference between the Garmin Fenix and the Fenix 6 Sapphire is the inclusion of a sapphire lens on the Fenix 6, where the original Garmin Fenix actually used a mineral glass. It wasn't even Gorilla Glass at this point, it was just a hardened mineral glass, but so far it's actually held up pretty well. Now let's take a look at the displays between these two watches. On the left, we've got the Garmin Fenix 6, which has a full color transflective display. It's very responsive, but it is still transflective and backlit. On the Garmin Fenix, we have a monochrome transflective display, and this is more like what you'd find on, an older Casio kind of watch. It's black and white. However, it is quite visible in direct sunlight and even in the dark. The funny thing is, I'd say that the Garmin Fenix is a little bit more visible in most viewing angles and most lighting conditions, more favorably than the Garmin Fenix 6. However, when you kick the backlight on, you can see that the backlight on the Garmin Fenix is actually kind of embarrassing. It really throws you back to a time, where we didn't have these full color displays, and where the Garmin Fenix 6 just looks like really crisp and vibrant, and yeah, looks much better. Another thing about these displays is going to be the resolution. As you can see, the Garmin Fenix is only 70 pixels wide, so it's pretty chunky and the letters have a lot of pixelation, where the Garmin Fenix 6 has 240 pixels, so it's a lot more high resolution. Things have a lot more detail. The text can get a lot smaller without breaking up. In terms of looks, I actually don't mind either of these watches. They both look pretty slick. Obviously, the original Garmin Fenix is a little bit more chunky and a little bit more rugged looking, but it does remind me of something like the Garmin Instinct Solar, so it doesn't feel that outdated, and I think you could pull this off without people questioning it too much. And flipping these watches over, you'll notice one thing right off the bat. The original Garmin Fenix does not have a heart rate sensor, so you don't get that. Whereas the Garmin Fenix 6 has a blood oxygen saturation level along with a regular heart rate sensor right on the back, so you can pick up that information without additional accessories. Another hardware change that Garmin has made over the years is the charging port. So on the Garmin Fenix 6, we've got the standardized charging cable that plugs in via USB, and we all know what this one looks like. It sticks off the back like this, and it's not that convenient if you want to charge the watch on the go. For me, if I run an ultra marathon, I may want to charge my watch while I'm out there running, and this is not great. I have to find a way to like hang this from my vest or stick it in my backpack or something. Whereas the original Garmin Fenix I have here came with a cradle charger, and the nice thing about this is that it was super low profile, as you can see there, and you could actually wear this watch like this, and you could have the charging cable sticking out and plug this into a power bank while you're running and not have to take the watch off, which is pretty awesome. And I kind of wish they still did this. Although I do like the standardized cable that they've come up with, because now all of the watches use the same cable, but I kind of wish they came up with a standardized cradle instead so we could still charge on the go. Now let's talk about what sensors come along with the Garmin Fenix 6 versus the original Fenix. The original Garmin Fenix has an altimeter, a barometer, a compass, and a temperature sensor internally. And basically on the home screen, you can cycle through all of these sensors by either scrolling up or down using the keys on the side. You can see my compass there. We've got the altimeter, barometer, the current temperature, and heart rate if you paired an external heart rate sensor to it. And that's really the whole user interface of the Garmin Fenix. After that, you just cycle back to the time and date, and that's really all you get. Now, the Garmin Fenix 6 has all of the same sensors, the altimeter, barometer, compass, and temperature as the original Fenix, but adds a few more. Like I said before, you've got the heart rate and SpO2 sensor on the back, but you also get a gyroscope and accelerometer inside the watch. And those additional sensors actually help if you have bad GPS reception. They can try to fill in the blanks by the movement of your arm and your body. Okay, let's talk about smartwatch features briefly and internal storage. In terms of internal storage, it's kind of comical. The original Garmin Fenix has 20 megabytes internally. 20 megabytes. That's like the size of one image from my iPhone, one picture that I've taken with the camera. In comparison, this Garmin Fenix 6 Pro Sapphire model has 32 gigabytes of internal storage, and that's because it does a lot more. And that's where smartwatch features come in. I'm not going to list off all the amazing smartwatch features that the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro can do. You've got a weather widget, you've got sunset and sunrise widget, you've got all of these training tools that are on board to help you with your running. You've got all of your step count and your health stats and calendar data and your phone's notifications. Not only that, but you can also keep offline music on board from services like Spotify or Amazon Music or iHeartRadio. You've got the ability to pay for stuff with contactless payments using Garmin Pay just by tapping your watch on a credit card machine. There's a lot going on here, and the list is kind of endless. And if you wanted more, you can go ahead and download additional apps and widgets from the Garmin Connect IQ store, which is kind of like Apple's App Store. Now, if we talk about what's going on in terms of smartwatch features on the original Garmin Fenix, it does one thing. That's phone notifications. It's actually kind of surprising. I bought this thinking I wouldn't even be able to pair it with my phone because it's so old, but it actually paired with Garmin Connect on my iPhone without an issue, and it still displays phone notifications like text messages and Facebook messages, anything right on the watch. Now, one thing I did notice when using notifications on this watch in the continuing Bluetooth connection to my phone is that I don't think the original Garmin Fenix has Bluetooth low energy. So when you're connected to your phone, it just drains the battery like crazy. But that's interesting because it's not all bad with battery life with the original Garmin Fenix. Get this, the original Garmin Fenix can actually give you up to 50 hours of GPS recording in one activity. That's actually really impressive even by today's standards. Even this Garmin Fenix 6S only does up to 25 hours. And if we go to the Garmin Enduro, which is crazy, this gets up to 70 hours. So the 50 hours offered by the original Garmin Fenix is actually pretty good by today's day and age. Another interesting thing about the Garmin Fenix is that it actually goes up to 2 weeks in smartwatch or standby mode. And this almost 10-year-old watch that I bought off eBay probably has a degraded battery, and I'm still getting almost 2 weeks of use out of this older Garmin Fenix. So the battery hasn't degraded that bad after all this time, which is pretty impressive as well. When it comes to the user interface on the original Garmin Fenix, it's really funky. Basically, to start an activity, you have to go in and press this orange button on the left here. You have to start your GPS first. That doesn't start your activity, it just turns on the GPS component. And then after it locates satellites, you press this top right button here to actually start your activity. Kind of roundabout, I don't get why that the way it is, but that's how it works. And on top of that, the activity list on the Garmin Fenix is pretty limited. It's got some weird things like sailing and kite surfing and things like that, but it doesn't have other things like strength training or any of those nuanced features. The original Garmin Fenix was more of an adventure watch than anything else, and that's where the Garmin Fenix 6 and Enduro and all of these new watches really differ, because they're more sport watches than just pure outdoor watches. Let's talk about wellness tracking, because this one's kind of funny as well. On the Garmin Fenix 6 and Enduro and the Garmin Fenix 6X, they all offer step tracking, stair tracking, how many calories you burn throughout the day. You can track your sleep in amazing detail, and you can also track your body battery, which gives you an estimate of how much energy you have left in your day. Now, if we look at the original Garmin Fenix, does none of that. Doesn't do even step tracking, doesn't do stair climbing, does pretty much nothing. It tells you the time of day when you're not in activity, and that's basically it. And that goes for training tools as well. On the Garmin Fenix 6 and Enduro, you've got things like your training load, you've got your estimated VO2 max here. I can go down and see my lactate threshold, my race predictor to let me know how fast I could run certain distances. I've got my training status that lets me know if I'm in shape or I'm losing my shape. And I've even got things like load focus that lets me know what zones I've been training in and where I need to improve. So you can gain a lot of information from the tools on the Garmin Fenix 6 and Enduro. The original Garmin Fenix does none of these things. There is a virtual partner you can use for a training tool that lets you try to maintain a certain pace while you're running or riding, but that's kind of it. Now let's talk about navigation when you're out on a GPS activity. And this is really surprising. The Garmin Fenix 6 Pro and Sapphire offer full topo mapping. So this is a real map experience where you can see trail markers and roads and all kinds of information on the watch itself. And these are downloaded right to the watch, so you don't have to worry about a cellular connection or anything like that. But here's the interesting thing. The Garmin Fenix, the original one from almost 10 years ago, actually does support mapping and navigation, which is really surprising. Because the code base of this old Garmin Fenix was revolving around their handheld devices back then, you can actually load a base map into this Garmin Fenix and navigate it while you're out in the field. I've gone ahead and done this, and it's kind of tricky. You have to kind of hack like these stripped down maps into the watch and do it through your desktop computer, but it's still capable of doing it, and that's actually really impressive because there's almost no watches on the market other than these new Garmin watches that offer offline mapping. So it's really cool to think you can buy this $55 watch and go outside and get full-blown offline mapping in your neck of the woods. It's kind of mind-blowing. What makes this even more special is when you look at the competition out there from these other big brands, nobody else is doing this, and Garmin has been doing this since 2012. Which, you know, they've got a big advantage there. Okay, let's talk about GPS accuracy on the Garmin Fenix versus the new Garmin Fenix 6. So I went out on several runs wearing the old Garmin Fenix compared to the Garmin Fenix 6S and also my Garmin 945 LTE as a baseline of comparison, because I think the 945 LTE is one of the more accurate Garmin watches. And in general, the Garmin Fenix wasn't bad at all. It definitely drifted a lot more than the new Garmin Fenix 6 or the 945 LTE, but by today's standards, it's still totally acceptable. It wasn't like way off in the woods or anything like that. However, one thing that it did do is it took a really long time to attain a GPS fix at the beginning of my run. And it wasn't just one run. Basically every run would take a while for that GPS lock to happen. And it's probably because of this older antenna design and older GPS chip. But for the most part, the tracks in general weren't bad at all. And let's talk about heart rate accuracy from the optical heart rate sensor on the back of the watch. Just kidding, we don't even need to talk about that because there's no sensor on the back. So let's move on. Okay, we've reached the end of this wacky comparison video between the Garmin Fenix and Fenix 6. Obviously, this is a totally unfair comparison. I only made this video because I thought it'd be kind of fun to compare something that's almost 10 years old against the latest and greatest from Garmin in terms of the Garmin Fenix 6 Sapphire. And at the end of the day, is it worth buying the Garmin Fenix in 2021? Well, in some cases, yes. If you're just looking for a basic GPS tracking device where you want to know where you ran, you want to see your pace on your wrist, you want to upload to Strava and get the kudos, the Garmin Fenix can do all of that. Not only that, but it's one of the rare devices on the market that actually does support offline mapping right on your wrist. A lot of the competition can't even do that here in 2021. But at the end of the day, it has no wellness features, doesn't even track your steps, and the Garmin Fenix tracks your sleep in great detail, your stairs climbed, your calories burned, it syncs with all kinds of different services, and it's way more responsive and faster to get a GPS fix than the Garmin Fenix. Not only that, but it also has an optical heart rate sensor in the back. It can pick up your blood oxygen saturation level. I mean, the list goes on and on. So yeah, totally unfair comparison, but it is interesting to see that even today in 2021, somebody could find some use with an old Garmin Fenix for just 50 bucks. Okay, that's all I've got for this video. If you watched it, kudos to you, because this was kind of a weird one, kind of a fun one for me, because I bought this thing with some intent of making a video about it, and this is that video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that thumbs up, subscribing to the channel down below, comment down below, would you consider a Garmin Fenix today? I'd like to hear from you. What features does it do? What doesn't it do that you need? And yeah, this was a weird one, and I don't even know why I did it, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.